You know that feeling. When the standard advice, the usual recovery models, they just, they don't quite land. Like something's missing.
Yeah, that exact feeling, that sense that maybe the picture isn't quite complete, that's actually what we're diving into today.
Oh, okay. So what are we looking at?
We're exploring something called the Recovery Integration Model, RIM for short. It was developed back in 2019 by Nikki Edwards.
RIM. Okay. Nikki Edwards, 2019. So she looked at how things were usually done in recovery spaces and felt what? What was missing for her?
Well, the core idea was a need for a more human-centered approach, really digging into healing.
Human-centered.
Yeah, she felt that, the traditional ways sometimes skipped over the really deep impact of trauma.
Right.
And the need for real emotional well-being and making recovery something that actually lasts.
Sustainable.
It's sustainable, yeah.
It's about moving beyond just, like, the surface behaviors, getting to the deeper human experience underneath it all. Okay, so less about just stopping something and more about what? What's the big idea here for someone listening? What's the benefit of looking at RIM?
I think the real value is in reframing recovery, seeing it as a journey towards wholeness.
Yeah.
Integrating all the different parts of yourself.
Wholeness, I like that.
Yeah, RIM really emphasizes self-awareness, like really knowing yourself and taking ownership, responsibility for your own healing.
Okay.
And also how crucial emotional connection is, both with yourself and, others.
So it's not just a list of steps then?
No, exactly. It's less like a rigid, linear thing that can feel kind of overwhelming, maybe.
Definitely.
Instead, it offers more of a cyclical way to understand growth with these practical things called practices to live by.
Practices to live by.
Yeah. So for you listening, it means a path that feels maybe more flexible, more empowering in the long run.
A cycle. Yeah, that feels more like real life, doesn't it? It's never just a straight line.
Yeah.
So what's the fundamental belief RIM is built on, the big picture?
Okay, so at its absolute core, RIM suggests recovery isn't just about abstinence, stopping a substance, stopping a behavior.
Right. It's more than that.
It's fundamentally about reconnection.
Reconnection.
Reconnecting to yourself, your inner world, reconnecting to your environments where you live and work, and even the larger systems you're part of.
That feels big.
Yeah.
Important.
And RIM proposes that this reconnection, that's what really allows for true, lasting healing.
Okay, reconnection. That resonates. So if we're going to really understand this model, what are the key pieces we need to unpack? What are we looking at today?
Right. So we'll definitely get into the 3 C's. That's compassion, communicate, and collaborate. Think of those as the sort of relational foundations.
Okay, 3 C's. Got it.
Then we'll explore the circles of recovery. That's the individual, family, and work spheres, how healing plays out differently in those areas.
Individual, family, work. Makes sense.
We also need to delve into integration and recovery, and that involves some practical tools, these triads like reflect, regulate, respond.
Tools?
Okay. And finally, we'll hit the bedrock, really.
Yeah.
The foundational 7 pillars. That's action, awareness, acceptance, accountability, alignment, attunement, and Outegration.
Wow. Okay. 7 pillars. Sound like a really solid, comprehensive framework.
It aims to be, yeah.
Let's circle back a bit. You said 2019. What was happening then? What specifically pushed Nikki Edwards to say, okay, we need something different? What felt incomplete?
From what the sources suggest, it seems like it was a mix of, personal and professional experience, a feeling that something vital was just missing from the usual approaches. The main drive was just this real desire for a healing path that truly honored how complex we are as humans, especially, like we said, considering trauma.
Right, the trauma piece seems central.
Absolutely. The key idea was moving beyond just managing symptoms, getting to the actual roots of why people are suffering.
Not just putting a Band-Aid on it, but actually healing the wound underneath. That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned the core philosophy is a rethinking of recovery. Can we explore that a bit more? How does RIM really shift our perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So first off, and this is huge, RIM reframes recovery as being all about that reconnection we talked about.
Not just stopping something.
Right, not just absence. It's about getting back that sense of inner wholeness and a connection to the world. Second, RIM totally accepts that recovery isn't neat. It's not linear.
No checklists.
Exactly. It's messy, it's dynamic, it's a very personal lived experience, full of ups and downs.
Which feels much more real.
Totally. And what that means for you, really, is it gives you permission to just embrace that nonlinear journey, your own unique path.
Lived experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, that feels different than just a clinical description. So it's less about fitting a mold.
precisely. It's designed to be human first. It really takes into account the impact of trauma, like we said, but also emotional intelligence, even spiritual intelligence. So it's a definite move beyond maybe purely clinical models that sometimes, might overlook your subjective reality, your
Yeah.
personal story.
Yeah, the individual's actual experience.
Right. The focus is really on your unique journey, your inner wisdom.
Okay, a more holistic, individualized view. I get that. Now let's talk about those 3 C's you mentioned earlier. Compassion, communicate, collaborate. You said they're woven throughout the model.
Yeah, they're like the relational threads holding it all together.
Okay, let's start with compassion. What does RIM mean by compassion? Because it can mean different things.
That's true. So in RIM, compassion has 3 key parts: empathy, empowerment, and the emotive aspect.
Okay, empathy, empowerment, emotive. Let's break that down. Empathy.
So empathy here isn't just like feeling sorry for someone. It's deeper. It's really feeling with them,
Huh.
trying to understand their experience from their viewpoint.
Feeling with.
Yeah, without that knee-jerk need to fix it or rescue them or judge it. The idea is that this kind of empathy builds real connection. It cuts down on that feeling of isolation.
Feeling with, not just for. Okay, that's a powerful difference. How does empowerment fit in?
Empowerment within this compassion piece means actively supporting someone's own agency, their inner strength.
Okay.
It's about helping them tap into their own resources, make their own choices. It's not about doing things for them, which can sometimes create dependency.
Right, fostering their own strength, not making them reliant. Makes sense. And the last bit of compassion was emotive. What's that about?
Emotive acknowledges that recovery is, well, emotional, deeply emotional. Not just for the person going through it, but often for everyone around them, their whole support system.
Sure.
So compassion, in this sense, normalizes the whole range of feelings: joy, pain, anger, fear, all of it. It sees them as natural, valid parts of healing.
Not things to be suppressed or ashamed of.
Exactly. It encourages emotional literacy, integrating feelings rather than pushing them away.
Yeah.
And it's worth mentioning, compassion connects strongly to other parts of the model, like the pillars of acceptance, attunement, and outegration. Shows how it's all linked.
That interconnectedness, yeah, it seems like a really core idea in RIM. Okay, second C, communicate. What's the focus here?
Communication in REM involves a few key things.
No.
Really being open-minded, seeing opportunities when things break down, and being honest about obstacles.
Okay, open-mindedness first. What does that look like?
It means truly listening, like really listening without your own assumptions or biases jumping in first.
Harder than it sounds sometimes.
Definitely. It's about cultivating curiosity, respecting different views, even maybe respecting parts of yourself you used to reject. The key is being willing to truly hear.
And I guess that applies to our internal communication too, right? How we talk to ourselves.
Absolutely crucial. And that second part, opportunity and breakdowns, that's interesting. Reframing conflict.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
RIM suggests that any conflict, any miscommunication, whether it's inside you or with someone else, can actually be a doorway, an opening for growth, for deeper understanding.
If you approach it right.
Exactly, if you approach it with presence and a real willingness to learn. And then the obstacle part of communication stresses honesty.
Just being straight up.
Yeah, real communication isn't just sharing the good stuff. It's having the courage to face the tough things, name them openly. That's what builds clarity and trust and ultimately stronger connections. And communicate ties in closely with awareness, accountability, and alignment. Again, showing how these pieces work together.
Honesty builds trust. Makes sense. Okay, the final C is collaborate. How does RIM see collaboration playing a role in recovery?
Collaboration takes recovery beyond just the individual. It moves it into this space of shared healing, relational growth. It's defined by co-creation, working towards a common goal and being willing to compromise.
Co-creation, like building something new together.
Exactly. It highlights that recovery often isn't a solo mission. It involves mutual effort, shared work in building a better future together. Recognizing the power of partnership in healing, really.
That sounds incredibly empowering, actually, building new realities together. And focusing on a common goal that really speaks to shared purpose, doesn't it? Whether it's family or a support group.
Or even a work team, yeah. Naming and focusing on that shared purpose gives direction, unity, especially when things feel chaotic or conflicted.
Right. And compromise, that can be tricky.
You can. But in RIM, compromise isn't about just giving in or losing yourself. It's about finding that respectful middle ground, meeting in the middle, honoring everyone's needs while keeping the collective good in mind. And collaborate naturally links up with action, attunement, and outegration, emphasizing the active, relational side of healing.
So these three C's, compassion, communicate, collaborate, they really set the stage, relationally speaking.
They form the essential foundation, yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the circles of influence and recovery. What's the difference between those two?
Good question. So the circle of influence, as RIM sees it, is like ripples in a pond. It shows how healing radiates outwards.
From the individual.
Exactly. From the individual at the center, out to their community, and eventually even impacting wider societal systems. It really highlights that recovery isn't just an isolated personal thing.
Changes within one person can spread.
Potentially, yeah. They can foster broader change in relationships, communities. It's about recognizing how interconnected our well-being is with the world around us.
So personal healing can have a wider impact.
Okay. And how do the circles of recovery differ from that?
The circles of recovery are more specific. They're the three key areas RIM identifies as essential for healing that lasts, for sustainable recovery.
And those were?
Individual, family, and work.
Right.
And the model stresses that recovery has to start with the individual, with a real focus on cultivating action. That's the personal foundation.
Individual action as the starting block. Makes sense. Yeah. What does RIM emphasize within the family circle then?
In the family circle, the focus is really on looking at, confronting, and actively trying to redefine those relational patterns. You know, the dynamics that might have played a part in the challenges or been affected by them. So changing old family dances.
Kind of, yeah. And a big piece here is the family as a whole moving towards acceptance. Accepting what they can and can't control in the healing process.
That's huge. Letting go of control.
And learning to respond intentionally rather than just reacting based on old habits. Integration in the family means consciously working on connection, setting healthy boundaries, and learning how to repair relationship ruptures when they happen.
So healing becomes a family project, not just one person's job.
Exactly. It's not just about the individual changing alone. It's about the whole family system shifting towards healthier ways of relating.
Okay. And the third circle was work. How does recovery fit into our professional lives, according to RIM?
The work circle looks at the importance of, well, meaningful contribution, finding purpose in what you do professionally, and interacting with those wider systems like your workplace culture, industry norms with integrity, staying aligned with your values.
Bringing your recovery principles to work.
Yeah, accountability at work is really stressed. Making sure things like honesty, responsibility, you don't leave them at the door when you clock in.
Right.
And these three circles, individual, family, work, they're not separate boxes. They constantly influence each other, reflect each other. It all weaves together for that integrated, lasting recovery.
That constant back and forth really drives home the holistic idea. Okay. Now, let's get into integration and recovery. You mentioned the three key areas here linked to the circles. Individual focuses on responsibility, family on detachment, and work on support. Let's start with individual responsibility. What does that mean in terms of outegration of self?
Okay, so responsibility. Within this idea of outegration of self, it means fully owning your healing journey. Owning the choices you make, how you respond to challenges.
Taking the wheel.
Exactly. It's seen as the foundation of self-leadership, and it aligns strongly with those pillars we'll get to, accountability and action. This sense of personal responsibility is what empowers you to stop blaming external stuff, stop feeling powerless, and actually act with integrity.
Yeah.
Owning your life, your well-being.
Stepping into your power.
Okay.
Got it. Now, for family integration, the focus is detachment. That word can sound a bit cold sometimes, like you don't care. What does healthy detachment mean here?
You're right. It's easily misunderstood. In RIM, healthy detachment in a family context means letting go of the need to control other people's thoughts or feelings or actions.
While still caring.
Exactly. While still maintaining connection and compassion. It links closely to the acceptance pillar and the autonomy part of the family tools.
Okay.
This kind of detachment lets you set healthy boundaries without shutting people out or abandoning love. It creates space for everyone to grow personally and relationally.
Boundaries with connection, that clarifies it. A really important balance. And finally, work integration focuses on support. What kind of support are we talking about in a workplace or system?
Support, in this context, means actively creating environments that genuinely lift people up, that provide resources that validate people.
Instead of tearing them down or controlling them.
Precisely. As opposed to systems that might be controlling overly critical, diminishing. This idea reflects the empowerment aspect we'll see in the work tools and that overall concept of outegration healing showing up externally.
Okay.
Real support at work fosters sustainability, it builds psychological safety, and ultimately it contributes to everyone's well-being and shared success. It's about building workplaces that actually help people thrive.
Cultivating positive, empowering cultures.
Doing
Makes
better.
sense. Okay, so RIM also gives us these triads of tools for integration in those same three areas: individual, family, work. Let's start with the individual triad. Reflect, regulate, respond. What are these about?
These are mainly seen as interpersonal tools, tools for building a healthier relationship with your own inner world.
Okay.
Reflect is all about developing self-awareness, doing it actively through practices like just consciously observing your thoughts, your feelings, honest self-inquiry, mindfulness.
Paying attention internally.
Yeah. It's tied strongly to the awareness and acceptance pillars. It lets you notice your patterns, your underlying beliefs, your emotional state right now, but without judging yourself for it.
That non-judgmental piece seems key.
It's crucial. It's about cultivating non-judgmental self-observation.
Okay. What about regulate?
Regulate is specifically about building your capacity, your inner skill, to manage your emotions, to manage your nervous system, like when you feel anxious or overwhelmed, and managing impulsive urges in healthier ways.
So handling your internal state better.
Exactly. It aligns with the attunement and accountability pillars. It helps increase your tolerance for difficult feelings, reduces reactivity, and promotes more conscious choice in how you handle stress. It's learning to navigate your inner landscape with more skill.
Learning to ride the waves instead of being wiped out by them.
Okay. Yep.
And the last one in the individual triad is respond.
Respond is about making that conscious choice. Choosing actions that align with your values, actions that are intentional.
Instead of just reacting.
Exactly. Instead of just reacting automatically to triggers or emotions or what other people are doing, this tool connects directly to the action and alignment pillars. It builds up your sense of personal agency, self-respect, and integrity in how you relate to others, shifting from automatic reactions to thoughtful, purposeful actions.
Moving from reactive to responsive. Got it. Now, the family triad. Authenticity, autonomy, acknowledge. How do these work in families?
These are more relational tools, focusing on how you engage more healthily within your family system. Authenticity is pretty straightforward. It's about showing up as your real self,
No masks.
right? Not feeling like you have to play a role or hide parts of yourself. It's linked to attunement and alignment. It encourages vulnerability, emotional honesty within the family, fostering genuine connection by just being you.
Being real within the family. And autonomy, we touched on that with detachment.
Yeah, it's related. Autonomy here means honoring personal boundaries, respecting each person's process of figuring out who they are, self-definition, healthy differentiation.
So people are distinct individuals, not just extensions of each other.
Exactly. It's tied to accountability and awareness. It helps prevent that unhealthy enmeshment, codependency, where individual needs get lost. It fosters mutual respect for everyone's unique path while still staying connected.
Respecting boundaries while nurturing connection. A key balance. And the last tool here is acknowledge.
Acknowledge is about recognizing the real impact things have had. Past experiences, present situations, acknowledge the impact on everyone in the family.
Validating feelings.
Yes, validating individual feelings and perspectives, even when they're different. And holding the shared family history with compassion, understanding.
That sounds incredibly healing.
It can be. It aligns with acceptance and outegration. It's seen as crucial for healing those generational patterns of pain, for repairing relationships, and just building shared understanding and empathy within the family. Creating space for healing by validating experiences. Validating experiences, acknowledging impact, essential for healing family wounds. Okay, finally, the work triad. Evaluate, educate, empower. How do these apply in work or bigger systems?
These are more systems-level tools. Thinking about how recovery principles can positively influence leadership, teams, even social contributions. Evaluate is about looking honestly.
At the system itself.
Yeah, honestly assessing the existing systems, the structures, the ingrained behaviors, the outcomes in a workplace or organization. It's rooted in awareness and accountability. It promotes transparency, learning, real growth, fostering honest assessment for positive change.
Honest assessment for improvement. Makes sense in any organization. What about educate?
Educate is about actively sharing knowledge, fostering a culture where learning is valued, and consciously modeling new, healthier ways of behaving and interacting at work. Leading by example.
Exactly. It connects to action and attunement. It lets the personal growth from recovery have a wider influence.
Ew.
through teaching, mentoring, or just being a consistent, positive role model, turning personal growth to a positive influence on the wider culture.
Using your growth to lift the culture. Nice. And the final tool in the work triad is empower.
Empower focuses on actively creating environments where other people feel encouraged, supported in accessing their own agency, where their voices are heard and valued.
So helping others find their power.
Yeah, recognizing their inherent worth and capabilities. This tool is anchored in alignment and Outegration. The aim is to shift cultures away from top-down control towards more collaboration, shared responsibility, collective success, building work cultures that foster agency and shared success.
Cultivating empowerment. Powerful stuff. Okay, now we get to what you called the heart of the model. That's the 7 pillars of recovery integration. Let's really unpack these. First one is action. What's the core idea of action here?
Action, in RIM, is really about embodiment. It's about taking the transformation, the insights, the values, and actually living them through consistent, intentional practice.
Making it real.
Exactly. It's the conscious doing. Without consistent action, all the understanding of the world just stays. Theoretical, right? Doesn't show up in your life.
True.
Key themes here are things like consistent practice, taking courageous steps even when it's hard, integrating feedback, making sure your actions match your values, that's embodied integrity, and even extending action into service, contributing to others.
Okay.
Interestingly, RIM connects this to the deadly sin of greed, seen as stagnation, but contrasts it with the gift of piety, meaning dedicated practice. It lines it with the third eye chakra for intuition guiding action and the spiritual principle of discipline. Consistent, values-driven action is essential.
Discipline from inner wisdom, not just forcing it.
Okay.
Pillar 2 is awareness. The quote is powerful. We can't change what we can't see. Tell us about the role of awareness.
Awareness is seen as the absolute foundation. Everything else is built on it. It's the ability to just observe yourself with curiosity, without judgment.
Noticings.
Yeah. Becoming aware of your emotions as they happen, aware of your triggers, aware of those deep-seated patterns of thought and behavior that might be holding you back, and aware of any underlying trauma influencing you now.
Bringing the unconscious into the light.
Exactly. RIM believes a lot of what drives unhealthy behavior operates below conscious awareness, rooted in old responses to pain or unmet needs. Awareness shines a light there. It gives you back the power of choice. Without it, you just repeat the cycles unconsciously.
Makes sense.
RIM connects awareness to the root chakra, grounding the sin of sloth. Seen as spiritual disconnection, the gift of wisdom from self-knowledge, and the principle of honesty with yourself. Self-awareness is the essential first step.
Honesty with yourself. Crucial. Pillar 3, acceptance. Starting from where we are is strength, not weakness. What does acceptance really mean here? It's not just giving up, right?
Definitely not giving up. Acceptance in RIM isn't about approving of bad behavior or resigning yourself to misery. It's about recognizing reality.
Seeing things as they are.
Yes. Acknowledging where you are right now, how you genuinely feel, what your experiences have been, but without rejecting yourself, judging yourself, or denying it. It's meeting yourself with compassion in this moment.
Okay.
And that act of acceptance, it creates this space, a space where you're not fighting reality anymore. And that's where healing and growth can actually start. RIM says true acceptance is empowering because you stop wasting energy fighting what is, and you can use that energy for change.
Freeing up energy for progress.
Right. It's linked to the sacral chakra flow, creativity, the sin of lust, seen as unintegrated craving, the gift of understanding that comes from accepting reality, and the spiritual principle of willingness to face what is.
Willingness to face reality. Okay. Pillar 4, accountability. Owning our story, not blaming ourselves for it. How does RIM frame accountability differently, maybe?
Yeah, it's specifically not about blame or shame. Accountability here is about taking conscious responsibility for your own recovery journey, your choices, your healing, your growth, owning it with honesty and courage.
Stepping up.
Stepping into your personal power, recognizing what's actually within your control. And it also means letting go of excessive self-blame for the past or for things you couldn't control.
Letting go of blame is key.
Huge. And importantly, accountability also extends to relationships. Owning your impact on others, repairing harm, building trust through your actions. It connects to the solar plexus chakra, personal power, the sin of wrath, seen as reactivity, the gift of counsel or self-guidance, and the spiritual principle of courage. True accountability empowers you to own your journey without shame.
Courage to own your story, warts and all, without getting stuck in blame. Got it. 5th pillar. Attunement. Healing is not just personal, it's relational. This sounds really important.
It's considered absolutely central to integration and RIM. Attunement is about cultivating deep presence. Presence with your own inner world emotions, body sensations, needs right now. Being present with yourself.
Yes. And actively learning to regulate your nervous system, listen to your body's wisdom, and also connect with others from a place of safety, empathy, real presence.
Connection is key here.
Absolutely. Attunement is crucial for building trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your relationships, trust in the healing process itself. Without it, healing can feel kind of intellectual, disconnected. Attunement makes it human, embodied, relational.
Makes it real.
Yeah. Brahma links it to the throat chakra, communication, expression, the sin of pride, seen as a false self-blocking connection, the gift of knowledge from deep listening, and the principle of humility. Healing deeply involves our capacity for connection and presence.
Humility and listening to self and others. Powerful. Sixth pillar, alignment. When our inner truth matches our outer life, what does living in alignment look like?
Alignment is that state where your inner world, your core values, deepest beliefs, your authentic self genuinely matches your outer life. How you act, the choices you make, your relationships.
Walking the talk. Exactly. It's about dropping the masks, the performance, embodying your genuine self everywhere. When you're in alignment, your choices naturally reflect your values. Relationships feel more authentic. Boundaries become clearer.
Reclaiming your inner voice.
Yes. Trusting your intuition, getting a clearer sense of purpose, moving from just reacting to living with intention. It's associated with the heart chakra integration. Love, the sin of envy, the pain of comparison distracting you from your truth, and the gift of fortitude, that inner strength to live your truth. Inner congruence leads to an authentic, empowered life.
Living authentically, intentionally. Okay. And the final, seventh pillar, outegration. Expressing inner transformation in the outer world. What is outegration?
Outegration is basically the outward expression of all that inner work. It's how the internal shifts you've made start showing up tangibly in the world.
How healing becomes visible.
Yeah. How it shapes your relationships, your contributions, your overall presence and impact. It's the culmination, the practical application of the other six pillars. It's where personal transformation becomes relational, cultural, even systemic influence.
Making a difference based on your healing.
Right. Key themes are lived expression, embodying your healed self, embodied service, acting from wholeness to help others, cultural resonance contributing to positive shifts, legacy and leadership, and dynamic reciprocity, the give and take with life. It connects to the crown chakra, connection to something larger, the sin of gluttony, seen as taking without integrating or giving back, and the gift of awe, wonder, and interconnectedness. True healing is expressed in how you live and contribute.
Expressing your inner healing through how you live and interact with the world. Wow. So we've really covered a lot. The start of RIM, its core ideas, the 3 Cs, the circles, integration, the tools, and now these foundational 7 pillars. It really is a rich, layered model.
It definitely aims for depth and breadth, yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the single most important thing you think our listeners should take away from all this? The core message.
I think the absolute core message is that RIM offers this really comprehensive, really human-centered way of looking at recovery that goes way beyond the traditional view.
Expanding the definition.
Exactly. It moves past just stopping a behavior to really emphasize reconnection and cultivating wholeness across all parts of life, self, family, work. And doing that through this ongoing cyclical process of integrating these pillars, circles, and relational dynamics we talked about.
That makes so much sense. Not just fixing a problem, but actively building a more whole, integrated way of being. Okay, reflecting on all this richness, what's one intriguing thought or maybe a question you'd leave our listener with? Something to chew on.
A question to consider might be this. How might really seeing recovery, or even just personal growth, as this continuous cyclical process of integrating all these pieces, the pillars, circles, relational tools, how might that shift your perspective on your own journey?
Even if someone doesn't identify with the traditional idea of recovery.
Exactly. Regardless of whether you use that label or not, how could this framework shift your view on your own growth, your healing, your well-being, right where you are today?
That's a really powerful question to sit with. And for listeners who heard this and thought, wow, I want to know more about RIM, where should they go?
Yeah, if this resonated, I definitely encourage you to seek out more detailed info on the recovery integration model itself. And really think about how its principles might apply specifically to your own life, or maybe the systems you're part of, like your family or workplace.
It definitely sounds like an ongoing journey, not a final checkbox to tick. And RIM seems like a really valuable human map for that ongoing process of understanding ourselves better and evolving. Thank you so much for unpacking all of that with us today.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating model to explore.